make sure that I'm key on the initial relationship, make sure they understand the guy that ultimately is responsible for making this happen. And when that owner's feeling overwhelmed, all those sorts of things, I've had all those conversations where you kind of talk them back.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast presented by Cornerstone International Alliance. I'm your host, Nick Olson. On this show, I get the opportunity to talk with the brightest minds in lower middle market M&A. Together, we discuss industry intelligence, deal management, shared successes, specialized expertise, and much more. If you serve the small to medium-sized business owner, this show will offer you tactics and insights you can use and implement now to become a master in M&A. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast. My guest today is the CEO of Warehouse on Wheels, an on-demand storage innovator, a culture-driven executive, a sought-after public speaker. He has a portfolio company executive for 7 different private equity firms. He has scaled many companies. He successfully exited with private equity as well and built a culture of empowered action. Please welcome my guest today, Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan, how you doing? I am doing fantastic. Better now that I'm able to talk to you. Glad we get you on the show and excited about today's topic. I know you have an entrepreneurial background, especially on the private equity side and looking to grow and build, and that kind of thing. But to kind of kick us off, tell our listeners about your background in private equity, scaling companies, exiting them, and what you guys are working on now.
Beginning, I actually started at Arthur Andersen. I like to say that I was rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic as that thing was going down. I never worked on Enron or WorldCom, never shredded a document, but got caught up in all that chaos. About that time, I was about 9-10 years into my career at Andersen. I was working on my MBA at Notre Dame. Another part of that story is they didn't want me as an undergrad, but they took my money as a grad student. So I was there, was working with folks, was really getting a broader view of the world as Andersen was collapsing, because I had gotten up every morning for 10 years thinking I was going to be a partner at Arthur Andersen. And as I saw the broader universe of what was possible, I stepped into my first CFO role. I was actually in a small family-owned business, which is where I found the concept for what I'm doing today. I was a customer renting trailers, and we'll get to that, I'm sure, at some point. But that basically started me on this journey, 7 tours of duty with different private equity firms. I've had investment bankers tell me on multiple occasions I've worked for the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll let the listeners figure out who that is. But a myriad of successes and failures, exits and non-events. So just an interesting track record that's led me here today. And what I'm doing today is I'm about 7-8 years into building Warehouse on Wheels. So we started with a small private equity firm out of Houston called Milton Street Capital. We bought a platform, a family-owned business that had 2 locations and about 4,000 trailers. And our deal is we take trailers when truckers are done with them, 10 years old, 15 years old, fresh coat of paint, fresh branding, check the mechanicals to make sure it's safe, dark, and dry. And then we rent them into the supply chains of folks like Toyota, Amazon, Goodwill Industries to give them flexible industrial storage, that on demand, you don't need to rent a warehouse, we can help you with that kind of thing. We grew the business to 15 locations by 2021. We sold the business then from Milton Street Capital to WindPoint. My management team and I reinvested and re-upped. And today we're at 37 locations and 37,000 trailers. We've done 20 plus management-led bolt-on acquisitions. We've grown the business organically with about 8 to 10 greenfield locations where we simply roll into a market, plant a flag, and go to work. So I think I have an interesting perspective. I know a lot of folks that listen to this podcast are advisors and folks on the transaction side of the business. So I've lived it both from executing the transactions and being, kind of the recipient of the transaction, if you will. So looking forward to today.
Yeah. So today we're talking about, closing the readiness gap and getting clients deal ready. I know that's a passion of yours, Jonathan. And so what does that mean for you, getting a client deal ready in the lower middle market space? And what does that practically mean to you today? And how is it different from just cleaning up, financials and, getting a little bit more deeper into the weeds?
That's a great question. And I think for us, because we've been through a multitude of private equity transactions, my management team and I like to say, are private equity fluent. So we actually close our books each month to a Q of E statement. So we're looking at, what's EBITDA? What are the qualifiers to get to adjusted EBITDA? Do we have all the documentation to support those things? pretty technical view of it. Okay. I would say that's probably not the norm. What I think from an advisor standpoint, as you talk to entrepreneurs and longtime, maybe family owned businesses, it's really the cleanup of all the stuff that they tend to neglect. Everything from org documents, and do you have copies of all the tax filings, and all the sorts of noise that is going to probably at some point in the process frustrate that family business or that entrepreneur, because that's not the stuff they like to do. So them engaging a fractional CFO or some sort of fractional resource to do the legwork to get all that together, it's just going to make the process that much easier, because we all know there are these emotional roller coasters in any deal cycle. The family or the entrepreneur decides, okay, I'm ready to sell. It's time. I need an exit strategy. They're all fired up. They're ready to do whatever it takes to maximize value. And then you get somewhere in that process and they're kind of like, well, okay, this is a lot of pain in the neck stuff. I'm not sure I really want to deal with all this noise. Is this really all necessary? And that sort of thing. And then there's the emotion of, oh my gosh, I'm about to sell one of my children, basically. How does that work in the psychology of that? So as deal advisors, everyone knows there's a certain level of playing family or entrepreneur psychologist. And so what I would suggest is early on in the process, finding a way for them to engage some sort of fractional resource to take that incremental lift off that administrative, burdensome process of really making sure they don't just show up with a shoebox full of receipts, but a professionalized data.
Do you have an example of something like that where you guys have worked on a deal where, the business owner thought they were ready, but then you dive in and like, yeah, you're not.
Yeah, my CFO should be doing this episode because he could tell you the stories from the front lines, but we show up like that all the time. We sit down and we have wonderful conversation, build the relationships necessary to put a deal together, and come to a quick agreement. Because in our world, we've built a playbook. I mean, in my world, I need a fleet listing, so a listing of all their assets. I need about 3 years worth of P&Ls, and inside of a couple hours, I've probably got a valuation that I'm comfortable with putting in an LOI. So yeah, that's when the rubber meets the road. When they say, "Yep, I got all that." "Oh yeah, we got all that." Or, "Hey, my guy's going to help." Well, their guy's usually an attorney who specializes in family law or divorce, or somehow they otherwise got tied in. It's not a transaction advisor. And so that's really, you're going to step into something like that when you see what their advisory team looks like. Who are they partnered with? So that's really the tell for me.
I was just going to be my next question. When you talk about an advisory team, representing that company, do you have an example of something that you've come across in your experience, maybe where it's like an M&A advisor or whatever, like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah. So it's so funny. I think some of the smaller M&A advisor guys, and we won't get to name names, but I've had probably most of our deals are direct with the founder,
okay.
patriarch of the family. But I think there's 3 instances where there's been an advisor on the front end for the sell side. And in one instance, they way overpromised from a valuation standpoint. So it created this tremendous tension, and we were the bad guys. But ultimately, we found a way to a deal. And then in other instances, it's been this minimal lift. I'm going to do as little as possible to get these guys to you, and then you guys figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't had the best track record, quite honestly. And a lot of it is probably because I'm even on the lower end of the lower middle market on what I'm buying. So I'm buying companies sub 5 million, let's say sub 10 million of EBITDA.
Mm-hmm.
And so really the advisors I usually run into, again, are the guys who's doing their estate planning. It's not anyone that has any transaction experience. And so then you get bogged down into all the document iterations and understanding what is necessary and so forth.
What kind of target companies here's a plug for all the advisors, M&A advisors out there who listen to the show. If they have a deal in this space, obviously they should reach out to you. What's your typical company profile that you guys are looking to acquire?
Yeah, so it's a founder-owned business typically where there's not a succession plan. We find oftentimes in our space where these are used trailers that are being rented into the supply chain of folks, it's not a sexy enough business for the next generation to want to own it. They've enjoyed the benefits of the spring breaks on the coast and the ski trips through college, but then when it comes time to, oh wow, I don't know if I want to be in the trailer business kind of thing. And so that opens the door for us. And so it's mostly founder led, no exit strategy, and really any range of sizes. We'll do small deals in sort of the $1 million EBITDA range up to, and including $25, $50 million type deals. And so it's just the niche space that we play in, which is that mobile industrial storage.
Yeah. So if you guys know of anybody or have a deal in that
Absolutely.
space, reach out to John and his team.
Absolutely.
So I know when you talk to entrepreneurs, as you're going through the process and you guys talk about the need to build a bench, what does that mean? How are you defining a strong bench? And what are some key roles and capabilities that most founders maybe underestimate?
I think it starts with who's the second chair. So when that founder sells and walks away, which happens in 99.9% of our cases, who's there to run the business? Because we're buying a going concern and one that we expect to modernize and gain efficiencies of scale and so forth. But really, at the end of the day, I'm not going to move to whatever city it is myself and run the business. I need someone that can run the day to day. So
Yeah.
the bench starts with who's in the second chair. And then from there, trying to pivot off what their strengths are. So is it a strong operator? Is it a strong commercial role? Is your controller, your CFO kind of the guy or gal that makes it all work? Whatever that is, then we can work on dealing with what the gaps are that come from that. But that strong second chair, that successor, if you will, and training is what's critical for us.
But beyond that second chair, like just the team in general, how important is that to you for you guys in your situation when you're looking at the company?
Yeah, it's from, I would say, on the finance and administrative side, it's very low importance. We've got a strong finance team. We've built our back office. Again, I mentioned we're private equity fluent, closing our books to a Q of E standard. When we buy these businesses, just as a point of reference, they're fully integrated into our systems, whether it's HR, IT, everything, and implemented into our financial systems and reporting within the first 90 days. So we get in there, we execute, we know what we need. So I would tell you that beyond the second chair, then it's a matter of operational or commercial strength. So whatever that second chair doesn't bring, is there an option? Even then, it's not really a hindrance for us. 20 plus deals into building these businesses, we've kind of taken our lumps and figured out what we do when we don't have that. So I think that makes us a pretty ideal acquirer.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you're looking at potential targets for as far as buyers go or acquirers go, someone like yourself and your company looks pretty nice to be able to get in the mix because it sounds like you don't have, if there are, we'll say a little bit of hair on the deal, like how to deal with it. You probably dealt with it, in the past. That kind of brings me to my next question. Is there an example that maybe something with a lack of bench strength maybe killed the deal, or maybe meaningfully changed the valuation or the expectations of what the owner should expect?
Yeah, for us at this point in our evolution, I don't have something that specifically aligns with that. I think our biggest deal challenges have come when we really dug into due diligence and we found maybe some questionable behaviors. So found situations where there are probably inappropriate relationships between the customer and the company and how things work in that relationship. We've walked away from deals there. I think we've walked away from deals where we found that it wasn't previously disclosed the level of customer concentration and the risk associated with that. And so those are the real hurdles for us. I mean, from an operation and execution standpoint, we just have a high degree of confidence. We've kind of been there, done that. And so at this point, that's not something that we generally find. The other thing I would tell you that I'm really proud of is, to a person, I'm pretty sure I could call anyone that we've acquired and they would be a reference for us to a potential company we would acquire. And I take great pride in that. It's been very important to me to build it that way because we're not doing a buy and burn, slash and burn kind of cut to the bone. We generally take these things and we nurture them and they grow to become something even greater. A lot of times we keep the brand, so the family name or the company name that's associated with the family continues to grow and be prosperous. So I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can say that, all these references to, get the word of mouth out there, that's amazing. For the advisors, listening, what are some of the most effective ways you think that, a strong advisor could influence the owners early on to make sure that they do have a good bench strength, good, process in place that would be appealing to you? Like, what are the things that I know you talked a little bit before about, maybe some negatives, but, what do you think are some of the most important factors that, an M&A advisor should be able to bring their expertise to the table to make sure that owner is ready?
I think it's the education process on the process. So that whole roller coaster that I described earlier in our conversation, preparing those owners for what they're about to embark on and having honest conversations and legitimately having them ready. You've all the guys and gals that are listening to this have been through enough transactions. They know that we're going to want to see working capital trends, and we're going to have a discussion around a working capital peg. For the love of all things M&A, please educate your clients on a working capital peg and what that means. Even if you got to go to use the old example of when you buy a car, you don't drive it off the lot empty. It's got to have gas in the tank kind of thing. I mean, whatever it takes to do that, that's always a sticky point whenever we start talking about working capital, it seems. So I think it's that education process, that honest conversation about you're going to have a range of emotions as you and I partner through this transaction, and that's okay. But the end goal is we all agree we want to achieve this objective. And so that pre-work, that pre-coaching, that building that trusted relationship, I think is critical.
Absolutely. And, the education is very important because in most cases, this is the first time these business owners have gone through this process. Kind of take that, onto you guys. If you're dealing with a business owner who's not being represented by an M&A advisor, what are you guys doing from that approach, to make sure that they already, because obviously now you're kind of playing, advisor to the seller kind of, and you're looking to buy the company.
Yeah. So I generally, make sure that I'm key on the initial relationship, make sure they understand the guy that ultimately is responsible for making this happen. They know me. We have a personal relationship. I understand their goals and objectives. And then as my team steps in to actually do the work, quite honestly, because I'm the not so pretty window dressing in all this, I'm the fallback for when those emotions happen. And when that owner's feeling overwhelmed, oh my God, your team's asking me for this, that, the other, I got to run a bit, all those sorts of things. I've had all those conversations where you kind of talk them back, and say, you're exactly right. We're just going to get through this. We'll make, the compassion and the emotional intelligence that it takes to get a deal done. So much like the advisors and folks that are listening to this, I become that advisor, that psychiatrist in a lot of ways, and helping them through the emotions of the process. And so that's a role that, again, when you tie that in with the fact that in most all cases, these folks are references for us on our future deals, I think that's a testament to we manage that process extremely.
This episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast is powered by Cornerstone International Alliance, where leading M&A firms come together. As part of this international network, you get access to global opportunities, over 200 M&A experts, enhanced collaboration and knowledge sharing, and some of the best M&A tools and resources available, all to help you take your firm to the next level. Ready to join this exclusive network? Visit cornerstoneia.com/new member today. What would be some advice in your experience to manage the emotions of the owner? I mean, going into it, there's, like you said, there's going to be, many, many ups and downs. Obviously, as things go well, things don't go well. As they say, sometimes a deal dies 4 or 5 times, whatever the number is nowadays. But you just got to kind of persevere. And, as someone who's never been through that before, obviously going to be a lot more challenging for them than you as an advisor, you as the buyer or a serial buyer of many companies. And so what would your kind of 1 or 2 big tips be on managing the emotions of the business owner?
I think the first one is take a breath. So everybody gets hot and bothered, and it's the issue of the day, and it's going to kill the deal and all that sort of stuff. So that, that's sort of, okay, let's take a breath. Do we really feel that way after we take that breath or that pause and reflect on it? Or, okay, if that can't be achieved, what's an alternative that might otherwise make you feel better about the situation that we're dealing with? So again, the psychology of the deal, I guess there's probably a book there somewhere. I mean, there's probably already one out there, but the psychology of the deal and being able to say to someone, nobody died. We still have an interested buyer. Your objective is still to sell this business. Let's take a breath and let's figure out how to get through this. I think that's key.
What do you think is a bigger challenge? I mean, it obviously depends on the deal, but is it the psychology of the deal, or is it the actual readiness of the business to sell?
To be honest with you, as proficient as we've become at the process, for us, it's about the psychology, day in and day out. I mean, God love my CFO. I mean, people literally show up with a shoebox full of receipts. And next thing you know, I've got, a quality of earnings report on the business. And so I'm a blessed man. I'm a recovering CFO. That's how I started my career in the non-public accounting world. But the fact that my team can do what they can do with that sort of stuff is amazing. So for us, it absolutely is about psychology.
We're talking about, you guys at Warehouse on Wheels are pretty much doing a buy and build strategy, correct? What are some, what are you looking for? Or what should you look for? Or maybe, for the serial buyers out there, or even as M&A advisors looking to, represent, the buyers. What are some tips and tricks and common, things that you've learned over the years to start, what are the components of a quality buy and build platform strategy that maybe our listeners want to think about?
I think it starts with defining the universe. We were in such a relatively focused niche. I mean, we're not like the leasing guys. We don't buy new trailers like Extra, Premier, and all those guys and put them on a 5-year, 7-year lease and do that sort of thing. We're literally buying used trailers in the open market, just like you buy any other kind of used asset, and repurposing it for this industrial storage solution. So there's not an easy to go search that says, hey, there's this many of them out there. So the first and foremost, I think you got to really be able to define that universe of what's the possible. And in our world, we believe that's still probably another 300 to 400 companies. There's some history in our industry and how this thing was built when GE Capital broke everything apart and created this opportunity. So I think being smart about that and really having a line of sight as to what's possible, that starts there. And then from there, understanding, okay, what does scale really bring to this equation? Because in our world, the back office can be scaled, the systems can be scaled, the purchasing power to be able to buy fleet into the business can be scaled. And so all those things are real. Is that really that opportunity for you? Or is it just back office can be scaled, but everything else has to operate autonomously? So the thesis, if you will, of the strategy. I think if you have those couple of things locked in, and then you decide as a leader of those businesses how you're going to scale that culture. So you're going to take all of these businesses that have been run as their own entity and have their own ecosystem and culture, and you're going to try to bring them into what you're going to accomplish. And for us, it was really about anchoring that in some core philosophies. So we rely on the book Extreme Ownership, for example. That is a core tenet of how we operate, how we communicate with one another. Everybody that joins our company, whether it's through acquisition or organically, you get a copy of the book. We train you on the book. We speak the book. We live the ethos of the book in how we interact and execute our business.
You started off, talking about your experience. Let's go back to your private equity days. How did those firms that you worked with over many years of experience, how has that helped you really kind of have a well-oiled machine, so to speak, with your new buy and build strategy? How did your days in the private equity world help shape where you're at today and how you can go be so effective and efficient and successful at this?
I like to say that we're private equity fluent. The good thing is most of the firms, as unique as they all may be with their operating models and their philosophies, their basic operating processes and their expectations are extremely aligned. They want the books closed timely and accurately. They want clean audits and no issues. And they want you to tell them what you're going to do and either do it, or if you're deviating from that, what's your corrective action plan to get back to what you told them to do? And that rings true through any of the 7 firms that I've worked with the varying degrees of success on my part. So I'm by no means saying I get it right all the time. But it is that fundamental rule of don't bring me surprises. Make it as predictable as you can, communicate, and be thoughtful. So when you do show up with, hey, this happened, this is going on, this is why it happened, and this is what we're doing to address it. So that thoughtfulness goes a long, long way. Because again, these guys have between 6 and 12 other portcos that they're dealing with. Yeah. And quite honestly, my goal, I'm successful when I become the lowest maintenance portco that they have. And when I do, I want the badge to put on my arm.
Yeah. You mentioned communication in the process. As a buyer, as a private equity firm, how often, do you want to be communicated with, as the maybe especially through due diligence, as that whole process goes? Because, there can be too much and there can be not enough. What's the kind of that happy medium of the right amount of communication, because like I said, you want to, stay out in front. You want to own up to your stuff. And like I said, what your plan is if you do need corrective action. So what does that kind of communication, frequency look like in your mind?
Yeah. So when we're in diligence and that process is going, obviously time's of the essence between the attorneys and the accountants and everybody else that's engaged. I'm usually being billed by the hour. So being efficient and getting through the process is mission critical. So it's my job, I think, as I sit back from the day to day of it, to keep it moving forward. So those regular check ins. I think early in the process, you go more often. You kind of over communicate it early to make sure you get good momentum, you get work streams going, you get people understanding. And then it becomes, just holding people accountable to deadlines, dates. Those things happen. People lose focus. Business owners are trying to run their business while they're trying to sell their business. And so every now and then you gotta kind of have that conversation that those of us that have had kids realize you got to kind of hold their cheeks and say, okay, it's time to pick up our toys. We have to get this done or this deal won't happen. And again, having the emotional intelligence to do that in the right way is mission critical, because you're dealing with folks that a lot of times, from the entrepreneurs and the founders world, they're pretty confident folks. They're pretty type A's.
Yeah.
And so to challenge them with expectations, because they're not used to having any boss,
Yeah, right.
their spouse, you gotta manage that the right way.
How often, speaking of spouse, how often do you want to talk to the spouse of the business owner?
It's so funny you ask, because as soon as we start talking about spouses, I think about this one company that we haven't acquired yet. So the husband is the patriarch. The two sons are in the business. They make the day to day happen, but mama rules the roost. And so it is ultimately our goal to build that relationship with her to then earn the trust of the rest of the family. And so we do see that a lot.
Yeah.
And most times, in my experience through the 20 plus deals, it's usually the spouse generally isn't involved. But in that one particular instance, it made me smile when we mentioned the spouse, because I know how important it is in that particular instance.
Yeah.
So you got to be flexible. You got to be able to move into those.
What are some things you're doing with that example in particular to make sure that she is comfortable and in the know and included?
I think it's just showing the due respect, having the perception of what the relationship is and the hierarchy, and making sure equal seat at the table, equal part of the conversations, never leave any space to any doubt that it's not part of that conversation.
And yeah, because obviously that can, even behind the scenes could be potentially killing the deal. And, you never know, whether it's, a spouse or maybe it's a key person in the business, that might be like, do we really want to do this?
We have that situation in another deal that is in the works, but we have that long tenured employee who's ready to retire and had visions of what that would mean, retiring from this organization and this founder. And so we're dealing with some inconsistencies in what that's going to mean for them. And so that absolutely is a great call out.
Yeah. Or even if you have like a CEO who maybe is like, I'm comfortable right now. I think I'm good. Like, dude, I don't want to work for a new boss or a new firm. Like, come on now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's self-interest, and what's in
Right.
it for me. What's in it for me is what it comes down
Hmm. Have you had to manage a situation like that you can recall that you're like business owner was all in, wanted to sell, and then you got maybe a key person in the management team or the CEO or CFO or whatever that's like in their ear about, not wanting to sell?
So I have a few that are probably slowing down deal process as we speak. More so, I could even point to family members that are in the business that are, I got this. I can do this. I can take this over.
Yeah.
And the hard conversation they're not having is that founder not having the faith that they can do it. And
Yeah.
so they're moving the process forward. So
Hmm.
unfortunately, we've had to separate from some family members on the team through time as part of the transactions. And that's always tough.
Do you see that in particular situation as more not capable of running the business, or they don't have the funds to buy the business, or maybe both? Because when you talk to business owners, it's like you don't necessarily just want to gift your business to your children, because now you're not getting the return on that long lifetime investment. Plus, now you're not really going to retire because you're still going to be involved in the business most likely.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right. The funding is the heart of it. But then there's also this little bit of doubt about whether or not he or she can run the business. We do see that a lot. But that actually, I think, could be an interesting niche for M&A advisors, is finding ways to help that next generation fund those transactions. Because a lot of times those kids don't grow up with a finance background or a perspective on what the possible is. And I think there are means to get it done, which is probably working against my agenda and what I'm trying to achieve. But I think honestly, in certain spaces, I think there could be value, and you could be a value-add advisor by bringing that solution to the family.
I mean, yeah, that can be a time-consuming situation. It could derail the process. So, like with the spouse, just any family in the deal, like get out in front of it and talk to them ahead of time and understand, make sure expectations are aligned across the board, because you don't want, like I said before, if you can minimize the surprises, not only to the buyer but also internally, you're going to be better for that. What we hit on. What would you be advice to M&A advisors who are looking to get into the buy side or have a buy side practice in choosing the right type of clients? Because you can spend a lot of time on buy side and not do a whole lot, but I hate to say waste time, but you can without the returns on the investment of your time and efforts to do that. So what are some key things like that maybe it's your company checks the boxes on, or things that you should consider and look at when before you take on a buy side client?
I think you got to look at track record. I think you got to look at, has this team been there, done that? You can go with a lot more confidence and probably a much smaller retainer and higher success fee when you step into a business like ours that has done this 20 plus times. We know how to run the play. We're just looking for at bats. Really, we know how to hit the ball. We just need an at bat.
What's your batting average?
Actually, it was funny. You were asking about failed deals.
Yeah,
I don't have one. Knock on wood.
Mm-hmm.
So far in this deal, once we get you to LOI, we're
Yeah.
going.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And so, yeah, no, I'm pretty proud of that. So I think that starts with credibility of the team you're investing your time in, because you're right, time's precious. And so for an advisor, that's what you're offering, time and expertise.
Yep.
So track record, funding, making sure really you've got firm understanding of where's the money coming from and how real is it. So again, I'm backed by, at the current measure, Wind Point Partners, capital's there, capital structure's in place. My debt partners are all top shelf kind of thing. You can go with high confidence on that and probably lean more into the success fee component of it. So I think that's where it would start.
Is there any difference in that, kind of back to that same question, but any difference or anything that's unique to maybe taking a company that's not backed by private equity or is not a private equity firm compared to someone who is, or if you're working for a private equity firm to kind of grow and build? Is there any differences on how you approach those as you're preparing to take them on as clients, or is it kind of similar?
I think again, understanding the credibility of the key stakeholders, so you don't have to be backed by private equity. I mean, if I were ever to go on and do something beyond what I've done at Warehouse on Wheels, and I show up, with adequate financing and the credibility of what I've done, I don't know that I need the good housekeeping seal of approval for a private equity firm. Does that allow me to go faster? Absolutely. So I would say that those are the differentiating factors that you otherwise consider.
Okay. Yeah, because if you are a private equity firm or you're backed by one, yeah, you have the capital to deploy and probably need to do it in a certain period of time, and want to put that money to work
and have the partners to help you leverage it. So there you go.
Right, exactly. Anything else that anything this is a great conversation, John. I appreciate it. Anything else that you can think of, or maybe a couple of key takeaways, to help our listeners understand just getting clients ready, understanding that buy and build strategy and how we can support our clients, not only to make sure that they're successful but also to be efficient. And then secondly, I would say, how can we as sell side M&A advisors be appealing to someone like yourself? I said when we bring the deals out, stand out. I'm assuming you get brought a lot of opportunities, or you look for a lot of opportunities. So what are some things that we can do to get our deal to the top of the pile on your desk?
So I think, to take the last part of the question first, I think it's doing the homework on us and understanding what we've done and where we've been, knowing, the level of transaction activity we've been successfully executing, the size of deals we've been executing, types of businesses. I do get a lot of stuff across my desk, but so much of it is a next fairway over. We're not even in the niche that we're in. So it's like, okay, guys, I know you're just got a big mailing list and you're dropping stuff, but we've been at this now for close to a decade, and we've been really specific about how we're building and what we're looking for. So I think the advisors that take the time to do that, I think the advisors that take the time to know us before they have something. So I guess I like to frame it as trust before transaction. So did you take the time to look us up, to spend a few minutes with us, understanding what we're looking for? I'm a lot more interested in those documents that come across my desk or those calls that are made, because I've sort of pre-qualified and we've got an investment in the relationship. And then as far as advising your clients and getting them ready, again, I think it's having the honest conversations about the emotional roller coaster that they're about to embark on. And it's probably a hard balance, because you want to win the work and you want to make it sound so easy, and I'm going to put it all in a box for you with a big old bow on it and all that good stuff, which is, you want to be white glove service. But there's a certain level where I think you run that risk of, when you get in the heat of the battle and they're looking at you and go, what the hell is this? You didn't tell me anything about this. I'm not sure how that's going to serve you beyond that individual transaction. So that would be something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, know what you're good at, know and leverage your experience. And it's not always about telling the client what they want to hear, but also, more what they need to hear. Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride. It's inevitable, but that's why you hire us, because we're going to get you through it.
Yeah, and we're going to smooth those bumps. We're going to try to minimize them. We're going to try to eliminate them, but we will never eliminate 100% of them. So
right.
Yep.
Amazing. Great advice, Jonathan. Great expertise. Thank you for joining the show here today. Where can our listeners find out more about you, Warehouse on Wheels, and the great work that you're doing? And how can they get a hold of you if they have a deal for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So all over LinkedIn, you can find me, Jonathan Brooks. The warehouseonwheels.com website. Obviously, you can check us out, see what we're doing, what we're up to. And those are probably the two primary ways to reach out. So Nick, I really appreciate it, man. I love what you're doing. I love the content that you're putting out there, and really honored that you would ask me to join here. So thank you.
Appreciate it. No, that means a lot to me. I'm glad you're able to join. It's guests like you who make this podcast what it is. So I appreciate you, and make sure to check out Jonathan on LinkedIn and at warehouseonwheels.com, and make sure that if you have a deal, you're going to get a good one, because they're experienced, they know their stuff, and has a lot of deals under his belt. So again, thank you for listening, Jonathan. Thank you for joining here today. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment on this episode. Make sure to stay up to date on all the new episodes. It's come out every Thursday morning. And pass this episode on to anybody you think could benefit here from our conversation. You can find all of our episodes at cornerstoneia.com/podcast. Until next time, everybody, take care. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Cornerstone International Alliance. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more insights, strategies, and real-life experiences to help you take your M&A game to the next level.